Hello and welcome to the live episode with myself and Mel. Today, as you might have seen on the thumbnail, we will be talking about the wholeness of who we are, so our mind, body, and spirit. And I thought it's a very good time to speak about this, as we were just discussing with Mel. It's the Aries season, spring equinox that we've just entered into today. And Aries is very much about me, so as in you, where it's very self-focused. So it's actually perfect timing to talk about this stuff and how to look after ourselves and how to maybe get to know ourselves a little bit better as well. This way we can then improve our well-being, our life just in general. Sometimes we just need to focus on ourselves, right, Mel?
Yeah, definitely. I always like this time of year as well for having a bit of a clear out. So I've been chucking stuff out, cleaning, painting, spring clean, fresh start. So I also find it a good time of year for sort of an out with the old and a review of not just physically what's in my space, but what do I need to ditch now? What do I need to turn away from, close the door on? What unhealthy habits, thought patterns, things do I not want to take into this new time of year? So yeah, there's a big release for me at the equinox, as much as there is a welcoming in of the new and trying to pick up some new healthy habits. For me, this is more like the new year than January. If I'm going to make any
Yes.
sort of healthy resolutions, it's more likely to be now.
Yes, yes, same with me. I definitely feel more energy with the spring when it comes in, when we're in the Aries season. That's when I actually feel like I'm geared to take action now, change things, create new beginnings and things like that. So, and I think many of us do. I mean, spring is beautiful and it really gives us the energy that we needed, or maybe we lacked a little bit during the winter time. uh, so yeah, it's definitely um, zodiacal, if that's the word. New year, right? So the year is starting from the very beginning. So yeah, so if there is anything that you would like to change in your life, I think the topic that we have today will might be able to help you figure out where it is that you need to maybe take action. So I called it so on the thumbnail, like I said, I called it the wholeness of who we are. So mind, body, and spirit we'll be talking about. It will be, I think, mostly are focused on our well-being. So how do we reclaim our well-being or just manage our well-being in a holistic way? I've been interested in the topic of well-being and health forever, since basically I was in school and started thinking independently for myself. I think it's pretty much when I when I've gained interest in those topics. So I just thought I might give a little bit of a an intro or information of how I sort of came to create a program that I have started now as well. Well, it will start in mid-April, but it will be offered probably, who knows, for until further notice, basically. But the sign-ups are starting now in 2023. So obviously, if you're watching this somewhere in the future, I'm not sure what's happening now. But if you're watching it in 2023, there's time to sign up to my Reclaim Your Wellbeing program. It's a 12-week program or 3-month program that is a group uh, focused program. So it's not going to be one to one. It's group within a group. We'll be working together through a Facebook group as well. Now, the okay, so let's rewind a little bit. So, in that program, I will be bringing forward everything that I know thus far and everything that I've done, experienced, learned, been qualified in, and all of these topics. Now, why I decided to create this program is because, as I started saying, I was always interested in well being and health. It was actually a very big topic in my family. I remember growing up, we were always very We would discuss a lot of topics relating to nutrition mainly. So we had quite a few books covering, maybe it wasn't really diet related. So it's not like my family was going on a diet or anything, but we would always have the topic of what's good for you. So, we hear a lot about in the media, of course, on the internet. If we're looking for some information, you can find information about, oh, this is good for you or this is bad for you, with that kind of language. Now, we didn't necessarily listen to the sort of popular topics at the time, but we would have a lot of books. So we had a huge book on natural remedies, and also different kinds of approaching how you eat. Should you look at your what is it, blood type, or all of these things, and then and then if any of us found something of interest, like, oh, let's say, I don't know, I can't remember now, but let's say oranges are good for this and this, then one of us would share it with the family and say, oh, did you know that this and this is good for you? So, like, let's have some oranges or something, and so it was always going through my family since I was little. And I, but personally, I developed interest in just not just the food and what food we eat, but health in general, including our mental health. Um, I was very interested in psychology and how people work and why some are different from others, why some seem more confident than others. What is it? Was it because of the family they grew up in? Is it just that they are like this? Like, how is a person just the way they are? So I was very curious on that stuff. And as a young person, I suppose I was just mainly interested in things like personality tests, and then it gives you all different types of personalities that there are in the world, I suppose, because you can always read the other types as well. So I was very introspective in that sense and very interested. I was considering studying psychology at some point, but thought that would be a little bit too much for me, to be diving that deep. Um, and then I suppose I was also, during the teenage years, I think many of us start to look after, or noticing how we look body wise, so our shape and everything, right? Because again, one of the pressures that we get from the outside world is you should look a certain way. So I turned into exercise. What exercise should I do? There were many, many popular, well, many ways of looking after yourself that were quite popular, and they were loud in the media. So there was, I can't remember actually. Oh, I can't remember the name, so I'm not gonna say it. But I was trying a few of them. You should do this to, have, I don't know, flat stomach or something. You run however many times a week, to keep slim and whatever. But it was many of that. As interesting that was, it was very much putting pressure on me, I think. Well, I think I know. At the time, I didn't think that way. I was just discovering, and also putting pressure on myself, because teenage years are difficult, I think, for everyone. So then, fast forward, I decided to qualify in personal training, but that was mainly because I was interested in helping others be healthy, and I still had, let's say, limited knowledge as to how health occurs. How can one be healthy? So I was still mainly focused on physical activity, on nutrition, and sort of these things, and also how you look after yourself in terms of, do you take herbal remedies at all? Do you decide to use maybe other medication if you need to, things like that? I was quite mindful of what I'm putting in my body all this time. And so I suppose when I found out the information about personal training and the way they have advertised it at the time, it sounded like it would be the right thing for me. I've learned a lot in there. It was actually super helpful. And I still use a lot of that knowledge until now. And I have also at the same time started deepening my knowledge on nutrition and learned more about physiology and biochemistry to actually understand how our body really works inside, rather than just thinking about, again, the topics of this food is good for you, this is bad for you, this is good for you. And it's like, sure, it's good to know, but I really wanted to know why, like what is the constituency of each food and how that interacts with our body exactly under microscope. If I could just look, I would just look under microscope into every single process that is in our body. So that was a very fascinating subject for me. And then, well, life happened and I have spirituality found me. And I feel like that part was exactly um, the biggest, I think, maybe let's call it part of myself that I found to actually fix the whole foundation of maybe my issues. Because, just being interested in health, nutrition, physical activity, what you put in your body, thoughts. I was very interested. So I started at some point also, I think Secret was quite popular at the time, however many decades ago. And so I became aware of, how our thoughts affect our life and all of that stuff. So all of this was kind of within my knowledge, but until I found spirituality, I never really addressed the foundation of it all, I think is the right way to say it. That was the only thing that really brought peace to my life. So up until then, I would try. I was looking after myself, like I said, whether it's physical activity, nutrition, but it was mainly I would put these things on myself under pressure, if that makes sense. I mean, depending on what school you go to, honestly, what book you read, they will tell you 100 and different things from each other, especially when it comes to eating, when it comes to, I think physical exercise is a little bit like you can actually make sense out of it all. I've noticed if you want to find balance, you can find balance, and mostly the teachings are sort of the same if you know where to look for the information, of course, and from which angle you're looking for the information. And but yeah, all of it was kind of serving the purpose of fixing something within yourself. So fixing, as if there's something wrong. So whether you're fixing your body because you just don't like how it looks like, or you're fixing your body because maybe you have a slight health problem, you keep fixing yourself and you're not really addressing the bottom of the whole of your existence, I suppose. The fact that you're, maybe not coming from an angle of appreciation and gratitude of what you have already to start with, and appreciation and gratitude to who you are. So that when I found spirituality, that has pretty much cleared all of my so I had anxiety, so I was suffering from anxiety. I had very bad digestive issues. I used to have back problems. Sciatica would catch me. Just many, if I think about it now, I can see it's all about stress and tension and anxiety. And until I have started working on myself from the spiritual point of view and actually really working on just finding peace, just being peaceful in my mind and in my heart, my body, those things were still holding on to me. No matter how much I would think certain exercise might fix it, let's call it, it helps, it strengthens your body, but you can't fix this, you're treating the symptoms basically. Still holistically, I suppose, and maybe in a quite healthy way, but it's still kind of treating the symptoms. You're not really addressing the foundation and the background of it all. So yeah, without me talking any more about myself, this is basically my background of why I decided to to do the Reclaim Your Wellbeing program now, because I would like to bring it all together and share it with people. Now, it's a 12-week program, 3 months, but it's really not going to be overwhelming, because it's more of an exploratory program where I introduce different subjects, different topics each week. And there will be some exercises, but they are very easily incorporated into your daily life, where you don't have to find extra time for anything really. It's just learning on how to be aware of what you're feeling, how you're feeling, and then, just paying attention to yourself a little bit more, and then just finding maybe some areas where you feel, oh, this feels like I haven't paid attention to this part of me, for example. So although we'll be talking about our body, so there will be mind, body, and spirit section. Body will also be covering nutrition, physical activity, but it's not nutrition in terms of what's good for you, what's bad for you. It's more about what do you feel you need right now, and how do you feel after eating certain foods. Do you feel you want, how do you feel? Do you feel good or do you not feel good? So it's just becoming a little bit more in tune with your body, with your mind, and with your spirit. And it's more of an informative exploratory program to which you will be able to come back to once I have it ready, so that it's kind of like you'll be able to go through everything from the beginning, and then probably each time you might start addressing something different, and it's just, kind of works from there. Yeah, so that's it about me. So I've taken so much time to chat about myself, but I'm sure, Mel, because you work in healing, right? You do Reiki and many other things when it comes to energy healing, which again, that was the part that I haven't discovered until spirituality found me and made the whole difference. I'm sure you have something that you could share with us as to how it helped you. And yeah.
And the thing is with the energy healing, and it's a bit like your program covering multiple angles, that many years ago I discovered Reiki. It helped me. It lifted my vibration. I felt first twice that I had Reiki, I just felt wonderful afterwards. I felt absolutely brilliant. But the more I did Reiki on myself as I learned it, I recognized that it can be a tool that can bring stuff up to the surface for healing. So it doesn't always feel great. You might feel lovely afterwards, but then afterwards you can go through something similar to a detox. Like if you were detoxing from food, you might feel it all coming out of your system for a few days. You might feel a bit rubbish, and it can be a bit like that with the Reiki. For me, I use it as a way to balance, at its most simple form, a way to balance my chakra, balance my energies, because my energy fluctuates a lot because I do too much. I know that's my fault. I'm working on it. So I use the Reiki to bring myself back into balance, but I do use it as a healing tool to dig up stuff that I need to work on. And mainly that's emotionally. I'm very blessed physically that I don't really have any conditions other than lower back pain, which I've had for many years, but I manage that quite well. So I tend to use it for the emotional side of things and to bring that balance in. But even that isn't enough on its own, which is why when I've produced like a package with my healing. So I do the Reiki, but I also bring in journaling, writing things down, getting things up and out and exploring it. I'm producing my shadow work course, which again is about bringing stuff up and exploring it and having a look. And I also do a meditation with my Reiki, which is more of a psychological tool, although there is a spiritual element to it. And it's about your thoughts, noticing how you talk to yourself, noticing your beliefs, noticing the beliefs you've been programmed to believe, bringing that up and letting it go. So even with the Reiki on its own, for me, it's not as powerful as combining it with the other stuff. And if I'm doing all the energy work and I'm doing all the psychological work, but I'm eating rubbish, I'm going to feel okay because I'm managing other parts of myself, but I'm still not going to feel as good as if I'm having that balance in all areas, which is why almost a year ago, myself and my husband decided our dogs that passed away got very old, so they couldn't walk very far. So we got out of the habit of walking further. Then we got a puppy, and we couldn't walk her very far because her bones were still developing. And we said, as soon as she's old enough and strong enough to walk, we're going to do 10,000 steps a day. And we do that every single morning, rain or shine, 10,000 steps every single day. That's how we start our day. That's our physical exercise. I work in a sedentary role. I'm sat on my bum most of the day. So that's my bit of balance, that I look after my physical body. I get moving. It's cardiovascular. It's good for me. And then I do my energy work, and I might meditate, and I've got all these other wonderful tools. But they work better because I've got multiple practices to try and bring me into that holistic health where I'm looking after everything. So that
Yeah.
balance is so important to overall health and happiness.
Yeah, and it's important to find your own way around it. You can start with experts, I suppose, in a sense. So, because for instance, what I've noticed, depending on what I was doing at the particular moment of my life, I was very passionate and maybe very involved in that particular, let's say, process. So, for instance, when I was doing personal training, I would be personal training. I think it taught me quite a lot about body strength and the actual metabolism, and how working on your body can improve your metabolism. You know how that kind of works. So then I would kind of hone in and zone in on that one topic, and be very I don't know, focused is the best word that comes to my mind, just very focused on that only. So I would try and kind of sell that part of what I do to people and what I know. And things have, like you mentioned, you had to change things because of your dogs. You maybe couldn't do this or you couldn't do that, so you had to adjust. And I, for a long time, I was trying to keep myself consistent, because I've learned up until then that, being consistent in, I don't know, XYZ is what actually keeps you healthy, let's say. And then after a while, I wasn't sort of addressing how the pressure of being consistent was then affecting me emotionally, which then obviously affects me physically. So because I was very much in, oh, you have to be kind of, I suppose I was sort of approaching the subject as if we're machines. Human body is a machine. It is in some way, but that's not the only thing it is. And so I was approaching it like how to keep this machine well oiled all the time, and not addressing the emotional health, the mental health around that, because I had a bit of a skew understanding that if you just look after physical health, then everything else will be better, as in your mental health, your emotional health. It's a big part, physical health, but it's not the only part. So anyway, so I was putting pressure on myself. And then when I discovered or became more focused on things like mindfulness. But that was through spirituality, because, of course, mindfulness, meditation, you don't necessarily have to call yourself spiritual to do those things. But they just came into my life during the whole spiritual time of my life, let's call it, when spirituality found me. And that when I decided to let go and just really actually feel into what I want to do or what my body needs right now. Because for a long time, since I was doing personal training, I would still continue to visit the gym, and I would do a lot of weights. But then at some point, it kind of correlated with the time when I was very, very stressed out. And I started my hypnotherapy, which I have mentioned a couple of times now, I'm sure, on different podcast episodes. And I think the emotional stress from it, or the release that happened during the sessions, plus the pressure and the stress I was putting on my body, because physical activity is a stress that we're putting on our body, especially if we're working out, I actually sprained my hip eventually. Um, and, and me being me, as I sprained my hip, obviously that hurt. And so I had to sit down. I was getting ready to work in the morning, and yet I still went to work. I just gave myself like 5 minutes, because it was just something that was ingrained in me. I wasn't addressing it at the time, but I always had this feeling of pushing on. I always, I didn't even, it didn't even cross my mind. I remember trying to call work and say, I don't think I should go in because something, I've hurt myself or something. I just sat for 5 minutes, stood up, and felt, okay, I can kind of walk. So I'm just going to kind of walk to work. I don't know. That was just my thing. But, I, because that was around the time when I call it spirituality found me, I finally started to just relax and actually pay attention to what I'm doing, because clearly my body is telling me something. And I was forced to relax. Like I was like, right, I had to sit back down, literally and figuratively speaking, because I've hurt my hip. So I couldn't do all the things I was doing. And it made me stop doing all the things I was doing. I just had to, the universe, my body, everything just said, stop it, Kat, sit down and think about what you're doing. Basically, it's like being a little bit told off, because I felt at the time that I wasn't very happy, because I'm an active person. We were talking about Aries season at the beginning of this discussion. I have an Aries moon. So my, internal makeup is to do. Like I keep doing, being active all the time. And I felt a little bit like I'm being told off, like I have to sit down. But at the same time, it felt a little bit like a permission, because up until now, I kept feeling the pressure of having to do things, whether it is, and that related to everything in my life. That was doing because I was working, trying to work on the business, doing because I have to go and do a job, doing because I have to do looking after myself. I have to, just I keep doing and doing. So I was looking at whatever I'm eating, how I'm preparing my meals, and I was very much very analytical at the time about these things, because I've learned a lot, and it's like I say, it's very helpful. But I feel like I've taken it a little bit too far. And only when I was forced to sit down and just relax and look after myself, I had to start to learn how it is to truly look after yourself, right? Because before I thought all of these things meant I'm looking after myself. But I wasn't really, because I was just pressuring myself into doing things the right way, whatever that means. So after a while, or when that happened and I had to sit down, I couldn't do my exercises. And when my sprain has healed, I knew it, but that was instinctively. I have to really, if I want to go back to being active, I really need to be careful in how I do it. I can't push myself as much as I used to. And it sort of forced me to change my way of thinking around how I look after myself, because I think that's the time when I slowly started doing more yoga. Although I was interested in yoga before as well, but I never really understood the foundation of yoga and how to do yoga properly until I discovered spirituality and spirit, and then it clicked and I understood what yoga is about. So I was just, in a sense, slowly and very gently, I was very gently looking after yourself rather than being this pressured, fixing kind of mode of what I should be doing. And there were times when I just couldn't do any exercise at all. And I had to, and it was just me changing my mindset around what it means to be looking after yourself. Just because you need a time of rest doesn't mean you're not looking after yourself, right? Even though we can hear a lot of noise around, go out and move, and because just sitting is not good for you, but sometimes you gotta just sit down. It depends. Again, that's why it all depends on the person. It's so individual. You just can't let all the noise from outside confuse you, basically, which is what I was doing, what was happening to me. I was very much just in the mode of what I think is right. And since I started listening to what I actually need, and just working on my feeling of maybe guilt that I'm not doing enough. That's the whole work in itself as well. I just completely my habits just completely changed, and they change all the time still. But now I'm completely happy with just doing what I actually feel my body needs or my mind needs, whatever, instead of what I don't know, what I used to think I should be doing. Sometimes I feel like sometimes you can have a little bit too much knowledge, and not much wisdom, if that makes sense. You can know all the things, all the book things, and understand the whole anatomy, physiology, and why you need to do this, and looking at the microscope, how does body react to this. But like, sure, it's a part of us, and it's really useful when you're, I don't know, if this is your career. But as a observer, you can't be really relying on this information all the time. If that makes sense, do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you know too much, and then you just work from what you know rather than what you feel is good for you.
Yeah, and that can cause overwhelm as well. And I think that you need to have the knowledge to start with about, okay, so what are our basic needs? What do I need to do? I need to eat, need to move, need to drink water, blah, blah, blah. But then if you can go down the rabbit hole, can't you, of, well, this person says this,
Mm-hmm.
and this doctor says that, and this expert says this. The greatest teacher for me in managing my energy, in managing my physical health. And like I say, I'm quite fortunate, I don't have any conditions, so I appreciate it's different for all of us. But for me, my biggest teacher has always been my own body. My own
Yeah.
body will tell me what I need to do. I just don't always take any notice of it, and I carry on. And I'm a bit like you, I'm Aries sun. And if I'm not doing, I just get bored. I can't. I really struggle to do nothing. And it sometimes, if I don't recognize the signs, I get sick. Very rarely. That's because I've ignored myself and I try not to. And that forces me to stop and to sit and do nothing. For me, I don't do enough of doing nothing in order to be healthy. I do too much of doing something because I'm constantly, my brain doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. Um, and then I get burnout if I'm not careful. So, but I do get warning signs when I'm doing too much. My mood changes, my eating habits change. I eat stuff because it's quick and convenient and usually high sugar and not good for me. And then I start feeling rubbish because I've eaten rubbish. I get snappy, I get tired, I get headaches. These are the physical signs that my body is speaking to me and telling me that I need to slow down. And no amount of books or expert knowledge at that point is better than my own body making me feel crappy because I need to stop and relax.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I think for me, because I was so involved and focused and fixated almost, in the subject of nutrition, because I mean, I still find it very interesting and passionate about it.
Mm.
And I like food, you know, so so
So why?
so I just, yeah, so but I was obviously approaching it from all different angles first. Like I said, when I was still in my family home, it was more about, oh, did you know that this and this is good, let's have this for dinner or whatever. Then it was more physical activity, personal training, how to build your muscle. You should be having, personal training and physical activity is very heavy on protein.
Mm.
And then nutrition on a university level and learning about biochemistry. I loved that subject, by the way. Most people hated it, but I thought it was amazing. Um, and I would learn how everything affects your digestive system, the physiology, and all of that stuff. And let's say book learning at the time always told me fiber, because I had digestive issues, right? As I said, so gotta eat fiber, 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 fiber. So I had fiber rich diet, let's call it diet, just a way of eating most of my life, because that was my knowledge, that was my head. And the biggest change in that approach for me was when I started to find peace in my mind and my body, but also through that started to trust myself, which was a big lesson for me, and just really listen to what I personally need and stop trying to analyze and find reasons as to why. Okay, I need maybe something else. And eventually, once I let myself just listen to myself, I ditched a lot of that fiber that would have, some people might think is very, I mean, people as in experts within the subject of nutrition and personal training would say is not good for you. That's why I don't like these descriptions. And I felt so much better. And I have discovered only then that my issues that were pretty much constant have just subsided and gone, at least 90% of them, because I stopped having all that fiber, because I personally now know that that much that I was having is actually not good for me. And that could be many reasons as to why it's, I personally feel it's because I had a lot of anxiety and stress, and eating then that amount of fiber is really not helping the situation. And yeah, it was actually becoming very comfortable with my food choices and not feeling guilty for anything has been, I think, the biggest thing for me, because it's still quite, there's a huge hype around topics such as fiber, but also, what do you call it? I forgot now. Not whole grains, carbohydrates, sorry. So carbs, everyone's like, oh, this is carby. This is, because it's a hype, right, around still. Don't eat
I love
carbohydrates, they're bad
carbohydrates.
for you. Pardon?
I love carbohydrates. I
I
know people,
know, right? But
oh my God, that's
if
most of
you,
my food.
yeah, but it's like it's the devil of everything. Carbohydrates, bread, no, pasta, no. But like, and I lived like that for a long time. I would still eat those things, but when I ate them, I was like, oh, should I? Maybe I should have less. Maybe, it's just like, again, the mind is going in and kind of putting you through a loop. And I just stopped it. I just felt, well, if I feel like it, and I'm gonna have it. And amazingly, that's exactly what I needed. And lo and behold, nothing happened. Like, weight wise, in the sense of, because that's the main reason why we might hear in the media, carbs make you fat. This makes you fat. That makes you fat. Blah blah blah. And it's like,
The thing is, it's nonsense as well, though, because it's like you were saying earlier, it's so subjective. My diet is predominantly carbohydrate, and
yeah,
I'm about 8 stone 10. So, for me, that isn't true. But for some people, carbohydrates, they do struggle with weight. And I know people that do like the keto diet, and for them that works really well. But we're all built differently, aren't we? So, the media and like you say, magazines and experts and people talking about nutrition can tell us, can give us a few facts, but ultimately it is very subjective. And what feels fantastic for me, my diet, to somebody else, they might be like, oh God, it's, it makes me want to sleep all day, I've got no energy. Whereas for me, I'm buzzing with what I eat.
yeah,
So it is really subjective. And some of it might be what you used to, what you grew up eating. And
yeah.
I grew up eating loads of carbs, and I didn't have any health issues growing up either. That was just the diet that
Well, exactly.
my body's kind of
Yeah.
used to it, and it works
Yeah.
well.
Exactly. So a lot of it is how you grew up. Sometimes you might discover that how you grew up maybe isn't the best for you, but then again,
Mhm.
we're looking at individual needs, right? So I suppose that's why, because there's so much information, and that's with anything, that's physical activity, how to look after yourself, how to, I don't know, I mean, mindfulness and everything is seems to be it's quite one sided. I think so. So you're either talking about nutrition, or you're talking about physical activity, or you're talking about mindfulness, as if it doesn't all correlate.
Yeah.
Sometimes, of course, there are many practitioners now and that are merging it all together, like dietitians and nutritionists that include psychology and also physical exercise. At the time when I was following and I was working in the industry, I would start following people who were there was a lady, for instance, who decided to study psychology and look at it from the psychological point of view, and how to stop pushing ourselves and beating ourselves up and making ourselves guilty. So there is luckily a lot of that happening, except I'm still not seeing the spiritual side of life, because that seems to be very somewhere very personal, private, because it seems to just maybe or mostly relate to religion rather than just being spiritual in the sense of recognizing that we have a soul and we're spiritual beings. That's how I understand spirituality anyway. And then addressing the energetics of our body. That seems to be still a little bit in the on the sidelines, a little bit, completely separate subjects for people that are maybe going into woo-woo, as they like to call woo-woo stuff, which means, it's very much out there. Um, but it isn't really out there. It's actually very, even for those who are quite scientific, it's very much scientifically proven that we have energy. And I quite like I read once in one of the books how scientists have measured the magnetic resonance of our heart and how far it stretches. And they in particular have not experimented but have researched the magnetic resonance of the heart of a mother and how connected she is through that heart resonance to her children, even if they're somewhere in the other side of the world. So that's why you always, we all know that a mother can feel when there's something maybe wrong with their children, even way up to their adult years, because there is no barrier. Um, and all of these subjects are very much scientifically proven, scientifically researched. So if, for those that maybe are a bit of disbelievers and very much scientifically based, then you can search that information, you'll find it. It's just that it doesn't, every time you go and work or study in a specific industry, you just concentrate on that part and that's all you do. And there's never this holistic approach. I haven't seen yet, at least anyway, unless you are spiritual, so called. And then within that, let's call it an industry, you then start addressing also your body, your thoughts, because it encompasses everything. But yeah, it's just a shame that I suppose other industries don't as much yet, or at least they don't. You don't have to be an expert on every single thing, but it's important to take it into consideration, and at least refer your clients maybe somewhere where you feel they might need more of emotional help or spiritual help, and just so that they can kind of look after themselves within different, the different side of themselves.
I mean, this is why Reiki is known as a complementary therapy, because it complements physical therapy as well. It complements medical intervention when that's needed. I've never heard anyone say, don't go to the doctor, don't go to the hospital, just get Reiki. I've never heard anyone say that, because that's not an ethical way to practice it. And yet it doesn't always seem to be reciprocated the other way around. It is more so now, and I do know that the NHS actually employ Reiki practitioners. I remember seeing a job advertised a few years ago now as well, probably 3 or 4 years ago. So it is becoming more widespread, but you know, we should be able, like you say, you can't be an expert in everything. So we all need to work together to make sure people are getting what they need. But whereas Reiki is seen as a complementary therapy, we don't talk about going to visit the doctor as a complementary therapy to Reiki.
No.
Very often that's seen as the only port of call, and people miss out on this whole other piece that's addressing all of you, which might actually get to the root cause of a repetitive physical problem you keep getting, because it's caused by an emotional blockage or a blockage in your energy somewhere, that once you work on that, it dissipates and doesn't return. But it is definitely getting better. And it's funny, I don't think about the stuff that we talk about as woo-woos, because to me it's normal. It's so normal. It's part of my everyday life. And I feel like we've got quite a practical, down-to-earth way of delivering and talking about these subjects anyway. But no, I don't think anybody has ever described me in any way as woo-woo. So, but some people do see Reiki and things like that as it's a bit out.
I laugh about it because I like it, you know, this description. Like, it doesn't, if someone said that, I wouldn't be offended now anyway. But it is, I think many, for instance, podcasts that I listen to or groups that I'm a part of, they call it that in an endearing way, not like, oh, woo-woo, you weirdos kind of thing, but like, oh, let's talk about all things woo-woo, because it's so, in a sense, all of the things that the mainstream doesn't really talk about that much. So it's anything to do with energy healing, astrology, psychic readings, mediumship, all of these spirit-based knowledge, energy-based knowledge that just isn't mainstream, and some might find out of this world, which is like woo-woo, right? So they just keep using that description for anything else. And I just wanted to add one more thing, that through the spiritual work that I was doing, and when I say spiritual, I mean energy work. I mean also discovering yourself through your spirit, which includes astrology as well. It's almost like it has given me answers that no psychological approach ever did. It's like almost like that's why I mean, when I went into this whole subject of spirituality and everything that it encompasses, it just gave me all the information that are completely foundational to all of the rest. So the body and the mind and the nutrition, like, it's almost like it filled in all of the gaps. So yeah, and spirituality also encompasses things like mindfulness and meditation. It just has this flavor of, you know, recognize yourself as a soul. And then when you look at, for instance, your astrological chart, and you suddenly understand so many things that are happening in your life, and often you just start understanding yourself and loving yourself more, because you notice that you have this makeup that you're meant to have because it was meant to be. And that also means that everyone else has a completely different makeup, and we start understanding each other better, building better relationships and compassion towards ourselves and others. So, and I mean, that's a very big foundation to many, many conflicts, I suppose, in our current lives.
I think a lot of the conflict comes from us believing that we're separate to other people, and believing that there's us and then there's other than us. And the way I see things now is that everybody around me is a different version of me reflected back at me, because we are all one. So we're not separate individual beings. We've all come from the same mass of consciousness. And it is difficult to get your head around sometimes, because our human brains are like, well, hang on, I can't work that out. So I have to visualize it in quite a childlike way, like there's this massive big piece of plasticine and little bits come off it and come down to the earth to have lives, and they fit into the body, and that becomes the soul. But I recognize that we've all come from that same big piece that we've all broken off from. So the conflict there, I think, is when we do perceive ourselves as separate, because that's how it feels. It's meant, the world is designed to feel separate, because we come here to experience life as an individual soul. That's the experience we have, and yet that's not the fundamental truth. That's not where we've come from. So having that sort of spiritual perspective, if you call it spiritual, you could call it anything, big picture perspective, stops that feeling of competition and conflict and other people being better than me, and the same with, I mean, very much with the fitness and the nutrition industry. There's a lot of it's focused on how you look, and you can get fixated with that and think, well, other people look better. Well, yeah, but they're just doing something different. They're no better than you. That's another version of me that happens to be fitter.
But that's also the very much of a paradox that happens when you enter fitness industry, and people that seemingly are better, obviously in air quotes, they're not. They have the exact same amount of stress and complex about how they look, and they don't like many things about themselves as anybody else. Honestly, it's the that's why it's at some point I was like, do you know what, it really doesn't matter, because wherever you are, you always think the grass is greener on the other side. No, most of the time it isn't. So just by seeing people, let's say in the gym or being runners, when you think, oh, they must be so healthy, this is easy for them, or whatever, thoughts you might be having, it's not. It really isn't. And so whatever you do in your life, however you look, the first very important thing is just to start to love yourself, and really appreciate what you have and how your body is built. That's I think quite an important part of being able, if you really want to and need to change something, then this is the big foundation of doing that. Because you can't, I mean, you can change many things about the way you look, but your experience of that and how happy you are as a result doesn't have to follow, if that makes sense. That's very much dependent on many other factors, and mostly on how you just love yourself and appreciate your body and your whole being, really, who you are, your personality, how you are in the world, what you're in, just like literally everything. Because I think if you really appreciate yourself, then you might start acting differently. I mean, you will, if you want to change habits, but it all comes, sort of grows from first internally accepting and loving the way we are, and just doing things based on what we feel makes us peaceful, comfortable, happy, on a deeper level. And from that, everything else can blossom, basically. And it won't feel like hard work at all. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So definitely, yeah. Stop comparing yourself.
So your program is encompassing mind, body, and spirit. So it's a holistic 8-week
Yes.
program starting next month. What do people need to do to register an interest or sign up for it?
Yeah, so the sign up is now open. The link is provided in the description of this episode. And you can sign up until you can sign up until the very first the very first week that the course starts, because the very first week will be more of an introductory week. So I still have it open, but when the first week of mid-April, and I will put the dates on my website, by the way, once the first week is completed, you won't be able to enter, because it's really important that you start from the beginning, because everything that follows will be growing from the foundations that we lay at the beginning of the course. So if you want any sort of benefit from this course, you got to be there for the whole thing. So you can sign up through my website. It's very quick and easy. Like I said, I have put the link in the description. If you have any questions prior, please let me know. Through my website, there are my contact details on there. You can change your mind, but you can only change your mind again within the first week. So if you enter and maybe something happens, you can't do it, whatever, you can leave with a full refund just within the first week only. So I'm not holding anyone in prison in that sense. But yeah, I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah, no, I think that's the main part. There will be all the information as to what the program encompasses is on my website. So there will be instructional videos in which I will have a recorded video for you to follow for that week. But also I will be there. So I want to be there for people to ask questions. So there will be Q&A, live Q&A sessions. You can ask any questions you have relating to the topic of that week. And also there will be some exercises for you to do, or practices, let's call it, that you then take away and you kind of follow during the week. Like I said, it's nothing overwhelming. It will not take any extra time. It will just turn your attention a little bit inwards rather than outwards. And then depending on what topic I'm covering each week, I might go on live again to do either a meditation with you guys, or a breathing exercise, or an EFT session, the emotional freedom technique. That just depends on what we're talking about and what is needed. So I want it to be quite an interactive experience. And if I feel maybe based on questions that I receive, it would be good to maybe demonstrate an EFT session, then I would do so. So yeah, it's very interactive, not overwhelming, and you're supported by the group of people who will be doing the very same thing with you at the same time.
Awesome. It's exciting.
Yes. Yes. It is very exciting. It is definitely a passion project, and it's just, I look forward to doing it. And I don't know how long it will be in this format that it is going to be this year, 2023. It might in the future become more of an on-demand course. So if you want to be involved in a group setting, then make sure that you join now. Okay, so I guess that's it for today. We have covered the whole hour. If there is, as usual, any topic you'd like us to maybe talk a little bit more about in the next episode, let us know. Please comment, like, and subscribe so we can bring you more of that kind of content. And yeah, if there's any closing words from you, Mel, go ahead.
No, nothing from me. No, I think I was a good broad range of topics that we managed to cram into an hour there, actually. That was good going.
Yeah, that was quite good result, I think, because it's a lot. But yeah, it was very much skimming through each subject. That's why we always encourage others, if there was something that piqued your interest, please let us know and we can talk about it more and have a nice discussion. Cool. Okay, so thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you next time. And we'll also see you on Thursday for live readings, as per usual.
Live at 5.
Yes. See you then. Bye.